All my time waiting for a sign. I even smoke, I've no job, no friends. I never even have a girl, and I throw my tears away in mine. Well, look at me now, but you look at me now. Can you see what's left of what I am? Giving up the way that led me here. Look at me now, but you look at me now. Now I think it's time for me to wake up, it's time to face it. Get up, get up, get up, give up my weakness. Wake up, Even now, what I am like, to waste all my time waiting for a sign. I eat and smoke, I've no job, no friends, I never even have a pearl, and I throw my tears away. Imagine, well, look at me now, but you look at me now. Can you see what's left of what I am? Giving up the way that led me here. Look at me now, but you look at me now. Now I think it's time for me to wake up, wake up, wake up. It's time to face it. Get up, get up, get up, give up my weakness. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's time to get up, get up, get up, get up. And I am just another baby. That's where I don't give up. I cannot see, I cannot feel anything. I spent so much time to
Et retrouve en toi de quoi t'animer, te réinventer, loin de
Blue Exorcist 2. That is a name I never thought I'd say with the 2 after it. But here we are, 6 years later. And just forget about the earlier season's original ending. Never happened. We're in Kyoto now. Shut up. Something impure cane, protect the left eye. Oh, we fucked up. Seriously, that's the bare essentials. It's more Blue Exorcist, except much stronger material. While much of what the first anime adapted played it very by the action shonen formula, this arc is when I feel Blue Exorcist is finally given more room to breathe, enough to establish its own personality. Impure Cane largely embraces the best elements of the earlier material, making even its most undesired genre elements alluring and commanding through endearing moments and fragments of genuinely graceful character building. Yukio and Rin were already very compelling protagonists, bouncing off each other in complicated, stubborn, difficult ways, and seeing how they sink and repel just keeps on becoming more and more compelling as the story progresses, and this arc is a peak for their relationship, and not just because of my incest kink. Even though this appears to be a more straightforward adaptation than the first series' original pathing, having Toshio Ono of Gatchaman Crowd's fame on series composition is still a reassuring name to have attached to the project, even if his work ends up being minimal. Other than Toshia, all the staff changes that happened are really nothing interesting. Still, offering a far more compelling thematic platform than every other part of the series with an arc that oozes confidence in the action shonen fundamentals, Blue Exorcist 2 will provide some pretty breezy, stellar entertainment. Scum's Wish is a painful series, but that is where its beauty lies. It is a harsh tribute to life, to the sacrifices we make in the name of love that don't actually feel much like sacrifices at all when it comes down to it. It's a parallel story of unrequited loves that forms a relationship driven by the passion that those isolated feelings bring. Its views on love are dark, but the answers it provides about love's painful birthing process and the sometimes selfish and hateful reasons we do what we do for love will resonate with anyone who's ever dared to understand the feeling. It's honestly a really messy character drama, but that messiness is exactly why I like it. Its outcomes come off as strange, but genuine, confident. That confidence is why I've read nearly every page of it. All of the emotional conflicts closely navigate the intersection of love, hate, regret, and passion with a constant state of rising and falling action. Graceful is not the word I'd use because it itself understands that relationships are rarely really graceful. Every character grapples with their inner feelings at separate times, and it uses those previously established issues to cover for one another. It's effective for connecting together its multiple threads, but it honestly doesn't have the firmest of thematic binding as it steps away from the previous characters' issues and kind of just lazily blends them together into a single conclusive solution. And that damages the overall effect that specific character's arc was supposed to leave. On the adaptation side of things, the director's hand is obviously assured in its visual execution. It's been a pretty fun experience watching Masaomi Ando grow with his directional work from White Album 2. It's extremely obvious that he's comfortable with close-knit character dramas because he understands exactly why conversations are the core to dramas, and he uses his great understanding of the fundamentals of dramatic framing to highlight those conversations. He doesn't elevate the series with anything overly ambitious, but sometimes just nailing the basics is enough to make a drama work, and that is one thing I know that Ando can do. Scum's Wish isn't emotionally gratifying from start to finish, but the rougher side of relationships it highlights is enough to make it something to look out for. Something to make you curious as to what really is love.
嬉しい
Avoiding having to explain the conspiracy vampire plot, Akiba's Trip is a game where you violently strip people. So, yeah. Akiba's Trip is a good game, and now it's an anime, and just like what it's adapting, it is stupid. Shamelessly so. But by simply embracing the inherent lunacy of the situations and variables involved, Akiba's Trip is simultaneously funny and actually exciting simply by committing 100% to its own conceits. Actually, it goes further than 100%. It doubles down on the outrageous by emphasizing on that exact outrageousness and discarding anything remotely normal. And that is the MO of director Hiroshi Ikehata. Being one of the main people behind the web-gen animation movement, his works have always had great visual personality. A personality mostly defined by smeary, energetic movement. He is a man who thrives in the absurd, and Akiba's Trip is another outlet for him to let that absurdity loose. If there's one word not in Ikehata's vocabulary, it's mundane. And Akiba's Trip is anything but. If you've seen one image from this show, you have probably already dismissed it. And yeah, I know, hand-holding is obscene, and I prefer to explain the Dakimakura on my bed to my parents than why Handshakers is on my screen. But I'll explain it to you. Now, if anime was an adjective, that would make describing Handshakers so much easier. Because that's what it is. It is one of the most anime things ever. It's about holding hands to unlock your power and then fighting other handholders to earn the right to challenge God, I guess? Yeah, Handshakers is pretty ridiculous. But I'm a fan of the ridiculous. and I also think the studio doing it, Gohan's, is ridiculous. But let's talk about them. The climate for TV anime has always been about fighting limitations. It's difficult, especially with the industry's current output, to have a well-scheduled show with a strong staff lineup. Everyone's busy and animation's hard. So everyone employs techniques and shortcuts to imitate actual movement, actual animation. Everyone knows that. So the existence of someone so obsessed with complex motion is an enigma. Shingo Suzuki and his main go-to bro, Hiroshi Akubo. These two do a ludicrous amount of work for the shows they work on at Gohan's. A small studio that brings together a small team for their projects and actually rarely outsources. Heck, the entire second season of K-Project was storyboarded by just Suzuki and 2 others. Suzuki himself is in love with complicated tracking rotation shots that employ, not very good CG, but when it works, it does work pretty well. Handshakers doesn't really seem to be doing it that well, but his other projects have more success. The way he usually gets this dynamic direction is from Gohan's technique of choreographing scenes in CG and then tracing over them later, a form of rotoscoping. It makes an inhuman but dynamic direction that really can't be emulated. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is Suzuki and Gohan's are interesting, but calling the rainbow filters and off-kilter fisheye good is another thing entirely. Occasionally, parts of their work are ambitious with what they attempt, and I really like that. I like that a lot, but most of the time, it's hard not to call the awful contrast of color ugly. But I want to be there for when it works. So I'll stick with Suzuki just a bit longer. And Handshakers itself looks to be applying such absurdly dramatic narrative devices to Suzuki's already insane nonsense. So I will gladly hop on this rainbow vomit of a ride with that one Star Wars kid from that viral video in 2002. I'm not sure what he's doing here. The fictional country where Akka takes place is shaped like a chicken. Yeah, I'm doing it again. I'm telling... It's shaped like a chicken. What more? What more do you want from me? To actually talk about it. Okay, I answered my own question there. It's easy to say we liked a show's plot or characters or whatever superficial thing that most reviewers tack on to everything they talk about, but what really draws us to a show is not its overt narrative features, but how well a talented staff can bring those features to life. It's those talents that turn the mundane into something more. And with the ever-reliable Shingo Natsume directing, whose directional skills aren't exactly why he's reliable despite him being good, it's his connections. In an industry where talent is spread extremely thin by the ever-increasing output of productions, having connections is what can make or break your production. Let's say there was a party with all of the renowned talents of Japanese animation. Natsume is probably friends with at least 80% of them. And also, did you know 90% of all statistics are usually made up on the spot? Those industry connections, favors, and friendships are the only reason One Punch Man had all the amazing animation cuts it did. None of those talents were employed by Madhouse, but they do share one thing in common. They know Natsume. From his start at JC Staff as an in-betweener to key animator at, well, a lot of major studios, to his directional debut on Horimiya, Natsume has had many opportunities to make lots of friends. It just so happens that many of those friends are extremely talented people, like Yoshimichi Kameda and Gosei Oda. The power of these connections are made most evident by each episode of Space Dandy being individualistic standalone vignettes driven by the creative finesse of a friend Natsume brought aboard to the project as co-director. Connections are important in every walk of life, but in the close-knit industry that is the Japanese animation industry, they are essential, and Natsume has them. Okay, that was a lot longer than I meant it to be. Let's talk about Akka itself. You see, I have faith in a certain Ono Natsume, the author of the manga being adapted. No relation to Shingo Natsume. Her previous work on the House of Five Leaves and her lesser-known gem, Ristorante Paradiso, are grounded in a distinctive drama of moment-to-moment character conflict that's loaded specific purpose in the themes it conveys on these small character-based twists and turns. For an author who's been all about self-contained small dramas, all about the dueling with words, this police drama set in a fictitious country seems odd for her. But I still want to believe there's something here, which keeps getting combated by many things, like the bland layouts from the trailer. Natsume and his bros are all about heavy movement, so in what seems like a low-key police drama, his layouts seem out of place. Regardless, there is a lot going for Akka, but also many things that go against that sentiment. But I still think it's worth the shots. And also the country's shaped like a chicken, so that's nice. Yeah, I'm doing it again. I'm telling you the Monster Girl show is good. actually. More so than most of the not demi-human shows recently. In Demi-chan, the bizarre is treated so normally, but these small differences still matter to its characters, to the girls. They are demi-humans, and there is such a thoughtful level of attention to these characters' feelings about that fact. It tells such small vignettes with such flourish and humanity. Its surprisingly intense meditation on earnestly attempting to understand others despite the differences leaves so much to unpack for the audience. Demi-chan may seem small in scope from an outside perspective, but the small lessons, warm friendships, and tiny moments that make up life itself, that scope swells to heart-seizing moments on a monumental scale. Life really is pretty simple, but it's the complexities built from those simple moments that draw out emotion, and these monster girls display that with more grace than most real humans. And hey, if you're a vampire or Dolahan, here's my number. And so the trend continues. More monster girls, but this time with a side of gay in Kyoto Animation. Specifically, most of the Amagi Brilliant Park team. Even more specifically, Yasuhiro Takimoto is directing. His previous works of Hyoko and Disappearance serve as evidence for his ability to create thoughtful storyboards. Storyboards that have the nuance of a person with a strong understanding of life itself. Something he shares with many of his co-workers. But there's something in his visual vocabulary that few at KyoAni, no, in the industry, can even hope to live up to. Comedy. Takimoto can perfectly encapsulate a mood, but that mood is beyond the quiet moments that people would expect of him. The familiarity of the lived-in direction that Takimoto takes allows the boundaries of his characters to be explored, for their dynamic to be prodded without the comedic camaraderie to ever skip a beat. He has something that can only be described as a perfect fit for the dynamics that define Maid Dragon's material. Takimoto draws the viewer in with his keen eye for naturalism and punctuates each scene with comedic beats that feel nothing but organic, even as it transitions from physical comedy to the quieter character moments. His abilities are inhuman, and that is why I love him. Also, the very detailed animator Nobuaki Muraki will be supporting him as a chief AD again, most likely meaning a consistency in contrasting Muki Katawaki's simple cute designs with occasional hyper-realism. On the more pessimistic side of things, this isn't a KyoAni-owned property, so they could potentially put this on the back burner and put more of their resources towards pre-production of their own future properties, like Violet Evergarden. But even then, KyoAni at its worst is still the best possible hands for any project to be in. And also Gay Dragons. That can never be bad. She's back. Explosions are back. Masochism personified is back. Shinya Takahashi is back. Damigami's back. And even though she's the only actual goddess, all of them are my goddesses. And I want to throw a party for each one's return. But I'll settle for just one party. One celebration for where all my goddesses congregate. Welcome back, Konosuba. Without any form of genre transcendence, Konosuba toes a razor-thin line of jet black winking satire. Put simply, there are few other series so good at having their cake and eating it too. From the base narrative superficially generic isekai story, the genre variables you expect from it do exist within its space, but they all are only there to service Konosuba's outlined goal, which is establishing its fantasy world based off of comedy that relies on audience expectations. It is still absolutely following the shallow narrative silhouette of similar fantasy series, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is the comedy, because when successfully integrated into the narrative beats, it can reflect into character psychology and expression, which is one of the most powerful ways to make an audience relate to or to be charmed by a character. And Konosuba fully understands this, and I